Thank you so much for tuning into my show, William Wallace for America. I am truly grateful for your time and glad you're spending it with me. Today's show is brought to you by Patriot Mobile. Change your cell phone service to a company that loves America as much as you do by going to patriotmobile.com/WWFA. And I appreciate that you're tuning into my meme show. I know I do a lot of these lately, but it just, when I look on social media and I see some of these memes, a lot of thoughts come to my mind. Now, I don't have to tell you they're memes. If you're listening to the podcast, you don't see that I am using a meme. But of course, watching the video, you are seeing the meme. But I'll do a good job at explaining it, as I always like to say. But there's a lot of really great things to talk about in this episode. And I've got some unique thoughts for you that I will share along the way. And in case you didn't heard, Joy Reid is saying some pretty ridiculous things. And I'm not using it to do what many hosts do, where they like to play the clips and show the ridiculous things that people are saying or doing. But I do want to use it as commentary on some things that I have about what's going on. Joy Reid actually said, when my mother came from Guyana, she realized it is not a land of opportunity for people like us. Meanwhile, the Guyana average salary is $5,200. Joy Reid's MSNBC salary is $3 million per year, by the way. My point is, it always seems like it's people that want to talk down about America, destroy things that we believe in, things that we love about this country, the land of opportunity, to elevate themselves, or they will let's say, cognitive dissonance. Actually, I can't even say it's cognitive dissonance. They pretty much know what they're doing. They know to stay with their base, they've got to trash America. They've got to say all the things that are, um, I guess, adherent to the narratives that keep them on the air, and everybody just ignores the fact that she's getting paid so much. It's almost like the climate alarmist will tell you how how global warming but yet the people that are leading the alarm, the people that are sounding the alarm and leading the charge, will say, are the ones that are flying around the world on corporate private jets. And I know it's been said before, but it can't be said enough, because it's things like that that are changing the hearts and minds of many of our young people in the wrong directions. Joy Reid also last week said no income tax, no well, let me put it this way. Let me get back to them. Here we go. Joy Ann Reid, as we want to call her, she said they want to take us back to no income tax, no regulations, earn what you want, and the family inherits everything. Actually, her exact quote said the children inherit everything. But what she said before that quote was she connected it to MAGA and to people that are of a different persuasion than her, will say. My point is saying, I'll bring all this up, is we shouldn't have income tax. We should have less regulations. I get it. We got to have some taxes. We've got to have some regulations. But look, if this ship steered back in that direction and got rid of regulations and got rid of a lot of our income tax, we would be a lot more prosperous country, especially for minorities. Um, but she still made it out to be a bad thing. Um, my point again of saying all this, I'm gonna read another quote by her right now. Here's what she attacked it to. Joy Reid warns Americans of scary MAGA plan. No income tax, no regulations, earn as much as you want, and leave it to your children with no taxes, was the correct word. And she says that's the world they want. I read it, I know it's similar, but I added a little bit more. It's amazing to me how people on the opposite side of the fence from most of America will say things, with enough authority to make it sound like it's a bad thing. Meanwhile, what happens is they get a lot of people that jump on their side of the fence and go, you know what? That is a bad thing. Those MAGA conservative minded people want, stronger families with less taxes and building generational wealth for your children, which is a smart thing to do to not only empower yourself and your family, but it helps build strong communities and a more prosperous country that does not rely on raising the debt every year to be able to bail itself out. So when you change the mindset of people to start thinking like keeping more of your money is a bad thing or having less regulations is a bad thing, it only softens the target, if you will, and allows for government to come in and with the answers and say, hey, if we tax you more and we give you more regulations, it's all going to be better. It's kind of how they sneak in those things. Oddly enough, sometimes I don't know whether to believe that these people like Joy Reid are doing this intentionally or they're just that stupid or they've been brainwashed themselves to believe that way. And the people that are using her and others similar to her are, again, the same people that want more regulations to control our freedom. They want higher taxes to gain more governmental control over us. And that's the vicious cycle. And that's why we have to be more and more aware of people that say really stupid things like that. On my podcast today, I'm going to jump around with some random thoughts because the memes don't always flow with the same meaning. So I do jump around a little bit. So you just got to kind of hang on for the ride here. And that's what makes it so great because as you're scrolling through social media, you go, yeah, that one. I like that one. Yeah, that one. And for me, I think a lot of really interesting things with it, which I want to share with you, which is why I bring them up. My next meme, the Democrat run FBI wouldn't have had the broad power to spy on Republican senators if Republican senators didn't join with Democrats in voting for the Patriot Act. That's right. I'm calling out my Republicans who voted for the Patriot Act, which was just another way to spy on Americans. And when you hear parts of it, which I don't have time to read today, when you actually hear parts of the Patriot Act and you read it, you see the vagueness in it that gives them a little bit more wiggle room to do things like spy on us. It says, if they're suspicious of somebody that might be involved with something that might be closely tied to something that might be, I'm doing that intentionally, by the way. When you read the Patriot Act, that's kind of how it sounds. Wishy-washy enough. But hey, I don't feel sorry for the Republicans that are complaining that they got spied on because many Republicans voted for the Patriot Act. I know we had to fight terrorism. You know what? That's true. But they didn't have to put all the other stuff in there that gave them the power to spy on Americans, taking away our constitutional rights of what is that? Right without search and seizure. I know. Let's hear it in the background. That's the Fourth Amendment, right? All right. This meme, I saw it and I liked it. So I tagged it, but I researched it. So I got some things for it. It says, it sure will be great when World War I ends. So this temporary income tax will end. So I Googled, uh, you know, was the, income tax originally done for World War I or whatever, however I put it, and it said it came back false. It basically was the income tax a result of World War One, and it came back false. But it did go back to the Civil War when Abraham Lincoln actually signed an executive order to be able to allow for income tax to help pay for the war. And it's just been something that no one's ever really gotten rid of until it was ratified in the 16th Amendment, which was actually in 1913, I think it was. So right around World War One, it's kind of like, hey, we're going to get this in, right? So there are some different things that you need to know about it and be more informed. I got a picture of wind farms out here in the middle of the it's either the ocean or the Gulf, who knows. It says wind farms are being paid to stop producing power as household bills are rising. It's all that green energy stuff that you start hearing the idiocy of the green energy movement, where I've now heard that wind farms are being stopped at times, but I also hear how some of these wind farms are breaking down and then they don't fix them and they just sit there. But if you watch the movie Planet of Humans by Michael Moore, which I've recommended before to people, well, William, how can you dare watch a movie by Michael Moore? Actually, the reason why his movie did not get promoted in the theaters is because the movie Planet of the Humans ends up making the conservative point of view, where it shows how bad the green energy scam is and how wind farms are, how they clear cut deserts. And you won't think that the desert is a great, vibrant ecosystem, but it is. How they'll clear cut forest to do wind farms and solar farms and different types of green energy projects. So it just shows not only the idiocy of the whole green energy movement, but it also shows the lies that get involved in it. Now, I'm going to flip hats, turn them around, and kind of talk a little bit about something else parallel to that, because a lot of people will hear me talk about how I'm very much of an environmentalist, mind you. A lot of people will say, well, William, you're always talking about saving trees and a better environment. You see, what's happened a long time ago is that we got divided up on narratives and ideologies. We were convinced that being environmentalist was some left wing thing. It was some sort of left wing ideology that that if you believed in a clean environment, you were a liberal leftist. So it's almost like the far right turned us against each other in those ways. And then of course, if you were on the left and you adhered to that, you just hated those conservatives because you were told that they believed in polluting the air with big industry. And we got divided up on the environment. And as a result, if you're pro environment, you are considered a liberal, and if you're anti environment, you're considered a conservative. Either way, big corporations start getting away with all of the different things that hurt our environment, and the green energy deal, or the green energy people creep in, and the green energy policies and everything get crept in, and government starts paying for it and getting involved. And meanwhile, the people are losing as well, because we're ending up paying for all of these subsidies that in return are hurting our environment, and they're shutting off, as this particular meme said. My other one that I want to bring up before I make another point is solar panels should cover all the decommissioned landfalls, ex-manufacturing sites, this is my other meme, and parking lots. They should not cover our idyllic farmland and fragile grassland habitat. You see, the irony of it again is the liberal leftist agenda pushes the climate change hoax in order to usher in green energy policies, and having the government and us pay for it with not only our tax dollars and the debt, but then they do things like clear cut forests, clear cut deserts, take over our farmland with these subsidies, not just for solar panels, by the way. They're using our farmland for the windmill projects. It's just things that just make you scratch your head and realize that the that there's a plan out there that's very successful, mind you, to divide us up so we don't know which way is right or wrong. And all the while, the green energy companies are getting away with it and shoving cash in their pocket. And the politicians are doing the same. And the lobbyists who made it all happen are profiting from it. And in the midst of all this, we're paying the price. So look, my environmentalism isn't liberalism. It's realizing that the politicians and bureaucrats have figured out other ways to control us through policies, tax us on our beliefs, and direct us in different quarters in the process, while they sell our land and our land rights to corporate interests that put money not only in their pockets, but back in the pockets of politicians and back in the government coffers, giving them more power and more control. And everybody says, oh, I know that's how it works. But everybody gives them a pass. Nobody says anything or does anything, but everybody keeps giving them more power by obeying and clinging to the narratives that they use to divide us up in the first place. Excess heat is the trees we're missing. I put that one up there because, again, it sounds like I am an environmentalist, but I'm not a liberal environmentalist. I'm a conservative environmentalist. And we exist. And the reason for me promoting it, like I said, is that government is dividing us up. I believe government is who has divided us up because they're profiting off a lot of this stuff, like the cutting down of trees. Everybody talks about global warming, and yeah, if you look at the cities, our cities are hotter because they're all concrete, and our environment is getting warmer in some areas, but it's man-made. We're cutting down trees at astronomical rates, and most of the trees being cut down are by government. Roads, bridges. Oh, William, we need roads and bridges, right? Well, what happens is, in the case of Louisiana, where I live, I can go down a section of I-10 and I can see where they've clear-cut trees to put levees in. You see the levee board gets involved. A subdivision floods. A politician runs on less flooding. We're going to get less flooding. We need a study. You get the bureaucratic agency of the Army Corps of Engineers that come in and say, yes, if you build a levee right down through these woods right here, this subdivision won't flood anymore. We are needed by the people, so government funds them. Then the study gets put into place. In our case, parish, we have parishes down here. Okay, we're going to get a government grant, your tax dollars, and we're going to cut down all these trees. We're going to put up a levee, and that subdivision doesn't flood anymore. Meanwhile, they build more subdivisions, get more of a tax base so they can perpetuate their phony baloney jobs and be able to fund their cars and all of the government that has grown as a result of all of these policies and, of course, growth, which is natural. I get it. But when you involve government, bureaucracies, politicians, lobbyists, and then you inject the Green New Deal and all the climate alarmists in there, you get a gumbo that really tastes like Soylent Green. I just pulled that one out of my back pocket. Either way, the reality is we adhere to all this and we perpetuate the movement of all of this through our system because we allowed ourselves to be divided up. And that is how they get away with it. I know I'm bouncing around changing subjects on you again. The next meme, Canada's organ harvesting boom fueled by assisted suicide. kind of did a little digging in here on this one. And when you look at it, it makes you scratch your head, but it makes you realize, wait a minute, we live in a world where more people need organ donations. And then we wonder why our government is allowing assisted suicide, and more or less why Canada's healthcare system is not only allowing it, but they are helping it, facilitate it. It does make you scratch your head and wonder, gee, I wonder if government is allowing this to allow for more human organs on the marketplace. Who knows? I got my little My Pillow meme up here for those you seeing it. This holiday season, go to mypillow.com, use that promo code WWFA. My other meme up next is a bunch of soldiers, and they are let's get this a little bit different. There we go. A bunch of soldiers walking in the street, and it looks like it might be a war zone, but it's in America. I brought this meme up today because it says 8,000 Michigan National Guardsmen were deployed by Lyndon Johnson with orders to shoot anyone seen looting, and at least 11 people were killed. Guess it's okay for a Democrat president. So I looked it up, and throughout history, there's been about 6 different times that 6 different presidents have called out the National Guard to assist in public peace. Goes back to what I said a few podcasts ago, where I look at how everybody's criticizing Trump for sending in the National Guard. And true, he's sending them mostly in the Democrat-run cities, but true, Democrat-run cities have policies that perpetuate more crime, high crime, and they just are oblivious to it. It's they just don't care. And like I said in a previous podcast, I believe that it's almost like Democrats want high crime because it keeps them in office. Poverty keeps people in check. It is easier to control people when they're in poverty, and keeps the Democrat machine in office. But at the same time, I also pointed out that, hey, look, Republicans own most of the defense contracting companies, so they're profiting off of selling those cities more guns and ammo and police protection, or police are devices that help the police. My point is, it's not a bad thing to send in the National Guard. Many presidents have done it. While I do think it can be somewhat political, and maybe it should be done where a president actually works with the mayor of a city or the governor of a state, and maybe done in a way that's a little bit less political. I don't think there's any way around that, actually. If it will clean up our cities, and it will, I would say forcibly, if it will, by forcing the National Guard in there, will help solve crime, help stop crime, slow down crime, and bring peace and harmony to a city, that's not a bad thing. Now, of course, in the case of the National Guard being sent out with Lyndon B. Johnson and people died, that's sad. Don't agree with that at all whatsoever. But sometimes, and let me back up again, because everybody said, well, again, if a Democrat did this, the people on the right would be saying, that's martial law. That's not right. Problem here again is that we're so divided up on narratives and ideologies that sometimes we forget common sense and take it a common sense approach. So let's get rid of all the narratives, all the rhetoric, and say, can a president find a way to bring a Democrat mayor to the table? Maybe they listen, maybe they don't. In the case of some of these Democrat-run cities like Chicago, they don't want the president's help. But is that because it's being done forcibly? Or is that because they just want to stay in control? And they know ultimately that if they have peace and harmony in their city, that prosperity gets in there, and maybe, just maybe, a conservative Republican may get back in office. My next quote is by Noam Chomsky, and he says, "When truth is inconvenient, power will label it as conspiracy." And I thought that was thought provoking because when I read that meme, it makes me realize that oftentimes we joke about how the difference between a fact and a conspiracy is like 3 weeks, 6 months, or whatever the case may be, how the saying goes. But it gets deeper than that, as I'm getting from this meme. When truth is merely inconvenient, people in power will label the truth as a conspiracy because they know when the truth gets out, they lose power. So it's easier to label everything a conspiracy. And then the problem is when it's actually a really, kind of a harebrained, really conspiracy thing, when you go, wow, that is crazy. When somebody comes out with a crazy thought or a crazy conspiracy about some big news story, it gets thrown in the same bucket, which makes it easier for the facts that are actually, or the conspiracies that are actually facts, to never be seen as the fact that they are. I go on a little bit and I'm speaking a little fast at some points, but I want to pause a little bit and explain something. I believe that it's all intentional. There's really no one right way or one wrong ideology or narrative. I really almost kind of believe that we can dissect a lot of the thoughts, the conspiracies, the narratives, and we can look at them individually and we can see, yeah, that's really truth or that's really false. But it's like we get bombarded with so many of them that it's hard to keep up with what's really going on. And it's hard to keep up with it in such a way that it's almost intentionally being done so that politicians, big government, bureaucracy, big corporations, lobbyists, and people in power can get away with a little bit more and maneuver things a little bit different. Because I believe there's a whole other game going on behind the scenes, that there's something going, and I don't mean that there's a man behind the curtain. I've already dismissed that before on my show. I don't think that there's some person behind, George Soros is behind the scenes and he's orchestrating everything the way it needs to go. I don't think that's happening. I really believe that there's so many power brokers, so many politicians, so much bureaucracy, that there's a whole other game going on in America that is being played in such a way that they're not all working together on everything. All the different narratives are all coming from different sources because one source might need this narrative so they gain more power, and one bureaucracy might need this to happen to get their power. Like I said, when a study gets done to cut down some trees to keep a subdivision from flooding, the Army Corps of Engineers bureaucracy gets more power and gets the the um, the right to say they deserve to continue to be funded. You see, regular people think about America and the USA. They think about freedom and family. They think about a home, baseball, and they think about their grandchildren and going to the next game with their kids. But politicians are playing a game with big corporations for money and power, and using lobbyists to make it all happen. But the people are paying for it in many ways. And mind you, the expense of a lobbyist is getting added on somewhere along the line to some product that somebody has to buy. And that not only keeps us distracted because we're in that perpetual hamster wheel to keep our own money going, and the faster they make us run on the wheel and the more distracted we get, the more we forget we're paying for that game, paying it through taxes. We're paying it through the fees that corporations are putting on to cover what they do for the politicians or what they do for bureaucracy or what they do for the lobbyist. We're the ones losing, and we realize that. People go, well, duh. But people still get caught up chasing the shiny objects and allowing ourselves to be divided instead of finding ways to actually work a little bit together to point it out. My next meme, picture of James Comey, kind of falls in line with what I'm saying here. James Comey produces letters signed by 51 former intelligence officials saying he's totally innocent. Now, I have some friends that believe he's totally innocent. I've done a little deep dive on a couple things. I want to make my comment first on this particular meme. Of course, he would get, it's by the Babylon Bee, by the way, but in reality, of course, he could get 51 former intelligence officials because they're all in the bureaucracies together. And the only way to continue and perpetuate their bureaucracies is to cover for each other. Covering for each other and perpetuating the bureaucracies not only keeps them with the job, keeps the narrative going, keeps the system going, keeps that game going that's going on behind the scenes that we don't notice because we're too busy thinking about Americans singing the national anthem and going to baseball games to watch our grandchildren. My other thought on James Comey is this. I will be doing a podcast pretty soon on James Comey. I've been digging a little bit, and you would be surprised on my off the record, my off the record poll. Most FBI agents will tell you that most FBI agents in the system all believe Comey is guilty. They all believe he's part of the cover up, was part of the problem, and that he violated his oath of office. And that's coming from several FBI agents that I've talked to that have told me what they're hearing within the agency. I'll be doing some more deep diving on that later. My other meme is from the Atlas Society, and it says for university presidents, as for politicians at all levels, one of the most valuable talents for the success of their career is the ability to say the things that make no sense with a straight face and a lofty tone. That's actually from the Atlas Society, but it's quoted by Thomas Sowell. I'm going to add to that because the other thing is that they will say just enough. They will say just enough things that sound factual or sound substantive. The quote says that they'll say it with a straight face, very convincingly, and a lofty tone. They'll say it with conviction like this with in their voice. This is just what it is. Donald Trump is not following the Constitution. Notice that they continually the liberal leftists and many Democrats continually want to trample on the Constitution, but they will use the Constitution when it's convenient to make them look important, sound American, sound like they know what they're talking about. Same with that lofty voice and that straight face. Or they'll throw out just enough fact. They'll say, in Chicago, well, or so things that sound factual. Not necessarily a lie, but it kind of how shall we say, it kind of walks the line. They'll say something like, in Chicago, um, crime is down. Now, meanwhile, they don't tell you they're cooking the books, or um, they'll say violent crime is down, because they've labeled it as something else, or they cook the books. But hey, we have lowered crime in the city of whatever, and Donald Trump is not following the Constitution. So they say things with the lofty voice, the straight face, the indignant look on their face that they're going to do the right thing, and they'll bleed in just enough things that sound accurate and true. It doesn't even have to be true. It doesn't have to be a lie. Just as long as a statement that sounds true and it makes it look like they really know what they're doing and the other person is the enemy here. And if you don't like the other person, it makes it easier for them to get away with it, because for those people who don't like Donald Trump, they're like, yeah, he's not doing the right thing. He's not at all whatsoever. Anyway, my next meme says, it's the guy on the chalkboard, the whiteboard. It says, when they say school choice would defund public education, they're admitting that if parents had a choice, they wouldn't choose government. Now, I don't know how it's an accurate thought, but I don't know how sweeping it is, because there's many people who are going to choose government education, i.e. public school, just because they can't afford private school. They don't have the option of staying at home. So they're going to choose, a government education. However, the movement to have school choice and have the dollar follow the child is a bigger movement amongst people who realize how poor and horrible much of public education is, how horribly run it is, and how much our children are being indoctrinated in our schools with narratives that help get the child out of a system and into a world where they buy products that are being taxed high or charged high prices for, because the corporations are in bed with the politicians using a Green New Deal to get the agenda to make you buy certain products or willingly pay taxes or adhere to a narrative that helps them shuffle you into corners and divide you up for better control, not just for marketing purposes of where you spend your money, but also for your vote when the next election comes around. So it helps keep them in office. The next meme is a quote uh, from Thomas Massey. Here we go. I had another little banner, a little banner issue. Let's see. Let's show that banner right there. The next one is a quote by Thomas Massey. It says, politicians tell you corporate greed is the reason food prices are so high, while they take campaign donations from those corporations, i.e. through the lobbyists, and perpetuate. Well, no, the corporations can donate to a candidate without having to go through a lobbyist. However, the lobbyist often gets paid to make the connection in other ways. So it's two different avenues where the corporation is getting money to the politicians, and then the corporations they gotta make a little extra money they gotta bring in some extra money to pay for their funding these politicians and the lobbyists. So they just charge more for their products. Back to Thomas Massey. Politicians will tell you corporate greed is the reason food prices are so high, while they take campaign donations from those corporations and perpetuate laws that prevent small farms from competing with those corporations. Again, the big corporations have the power. They squash the little guy. I've actually talked about this in when it comes to our patent system. Our patent system is broken in ways that big corporations are able to do the right campaign donations to get the right people appointed to run the patent office and are able to, you know, passively dismiss some patents being put in by the little guy and let the big corporations get those patents in later. That was a story I did a long time ago, and I'm gonna have to refresh that one again another time. My next meme up is well, that's my Patriot Mobile meme right there. But the next meme up here is a picture of an elephant and a Democrat, and they're in a car, a convertible, old, I don't know, 50 something, whatever, convertible, and they're driving off a cliff, kind of like what's that? The Thelma and Louise did. And there's a cliff that they're driving off. It says financial cliff, and the elephant and the Democrat are holding hands up together, you know, like they're, you know, kind of cheering a little bit. And it just paints a picture of Republicans and Democrats being united in driving off the financial cliff. You know, I'm Republican because most of my values are held dear by most people within the Republican Party. And but I always like to say that I'm more of a libertarian minded Republican because I find myself kind of, and I don't want to be saying in the middle, but I find myself hearing reasonable things from Democrats who aren't far left, but are kind of over there on that Democrat side because they have one or two beliefs that align more with the Democrat Party. But when you really talk to people, you find out what we have in common. You realize that we're all more libertarian minded, most of us. But I tend to vote Republican because that's where most of the people that I know that share the same beliefs are, that are more about fiscal responsibility. But oftentimes I find Republicans making votes that make this picture true of a Democrat and Republican driving together off the fiscal cliff, off the financial cliff in this case. Like I said with the Patriot Act earlier, when you really look at it, the only reason it got through is because there's Republicans who voted for it. So the Republican Party doesn't always do us favors. The Democrat Party, oftentimes, in my opinion, does a lot worse for us. However, when it comes to that fiscal cliff, the reason we're 30 something trillion dollars in debt, almost $40 trillion in debt, actually, is because through the years, Republicans have been complicit. Democrats have done things, Republicans have done things, and none of them have been fiscally responsible for the people because they're too busy listening to the corporate interests through the lobbyist. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to step to the side for a second here. There's a lot of lobbyists that do good things. There's lobbyists that do for good. There's lobbyists out there that actually fight for the people. So I'm not referring to them. I'm referring to the structure and the game that I referred to earlier that perpetuates the growth of government, the power of government, and the people operating it in such a way that the people are losing. I really believe that there's probably another game that's a little bit more difficult to play that the people could prosper better and that our country could do better, that our country could fix a lot of this nonsense in ways where everybody prospers. We've got a system that is broken not because of who's in office today, but a succession of generations of elected officials and lobbyists and corporate interests over the last couple hundred years that have put things in place that are actually working against each other. It's not one policy today, it's 100 policies that have been put in place that are conflicting with each other over the last bunch of generations. I'm not giving anybody a pass here. I'm just saying that there's other problems that people aren't looking at because I myself get tired of hearing, oh, well, it's the Democrats' fault, or oh, well, it's the Republicans' fault. And oh, you know what? It's our fault for not expecting better, for not demanding more. It's our fault for not saying, hey, we deserve better, and vote everybody out on every election and stop electing incumbents on a regular basis. My last two memes, this is my second to last meme, by the way. You'll hear me say this again. I put it up because I really liked it. It says, never let anyone take away your freedom because of the greater good. Freedom is the greater good. You see, this ties into what I've been saying because everybody thinks about, well, we need this bureaucracy because it helps this group of people. We need this tax because it helps this group of people. We need this policy because it helps this group of people. We need all of this government because it's for the greater good. Meanwhile, we lose sight on basic freedoms. We lose sight on policies that sound hard, but actually have better results, like capitalism, like free markets. They want to regulate us, like I said earlier, with regulations. Joy Reid talked about how bad it is to deregulate. When you have more regulation, you have more strangleholds on our economy. When you vilify capitalism, like a lot of people on the left do, you weaken its power, you weaken its popularity, you vilify it in such a way that more people allow our politicians to create policies that hurt it. And as a result, the real thing that we lose isn't poverty. We don't lose crime. We don't lose high crime rates, that is. We don't lose, you know, there's things we don't lose the bad, we don't lose, how shall we say, we don't lose the bad things in society when we have more freedom. We gain the good things. The bad things go away when we have less regulations and less taxes, and we realize that freedom is indeed the greater good. This is my last meme for the show. It says it was by I don't know who this is. It's a quote by Milan Kundera. The first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history, then have someone write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history. Before long, the nation will begin to forget what it is and what it was. Some of my friends might say, well, that's conspiracy theory. They're not burning books. They're not destroying culture. They're not. Look around. They want you to switch to digital books. They want you to switch to digital currency. They want you to switch to all this AI. And they want you to cheer when Meta develops a new, you know, 4 mile, square mile facility. I know it's modernism, and we do need some of it. But we got to find a way to separate having a modern society from allowing control. We have to find ways to make freedom the most important goal and have freedom control our modern society. And that's part of what happens when we allow them to destroy our culture by taking down statues, saying that history is bad, or that you can't call history bad. History is what it is. But when you allow them to say it's bad, the next step is they eliminate it from the history books. And that allows them to write a new history. And you don't think it's possible. History belongs to the victors. Many societies that got taken over by the victor, their history gets destroyed. Their culture gets destroyed. You'll find it in remnants of a dig by anthropologists. You'll find it in the remnants of how great capitalism used to be in many other ways. But if we continue to allow them to divide us and destroy ourselves from within, there'll be a new history. There'll be a new history for a new America where people don't have any freedom. They'll find a way to get rid of the Constitution. And while that sounds like a conspiracy, folks, remember, oftentimes truth gets labeled a conspiracy to be able to let people in power have more control over us. Thank you so much for your time today. I'd really appreciate it if you go visit some of my sponsors, like the wellness company at twc.health. If you go visit maybe Patriot Mobile, switch your cell phone service to Patriot Mobile. But if you're in New Orleans, go to Shortstop Po' Boy for a great po' boy. Go to Quarter View for a great New Orleans style meal. Go to Signet Landing for Bayou for a swamp tour or for a great meal, Cajun style meal on the Bayou. And please go visit my website at williamwallace.net. Thank you again. And please share the podcast with somebody else that you think might enjoy some of this information, even some of those memes.